Now, as far as themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? Not as strongly in this movie as the past two movies. As far as the theme of hope, which was a big, I felt like a forced theme in the theatrical cut, it's still there, but as I wanted in that movie, we're feeling the need for hope rather than being told constantly, boy, the world needs hope. Superman's gone. The world needs hope. No, we were feeling the heaviness of the world in the wake of Superman's death at the beginning of this movie and throughout much of it. And so I really... I think that hope is probably a theme in there somewhere. What's interesting to me is that, if anything, they call back to this idea that Superman is a model for humans, and that they, to be an example to them of what humans can be if they choose to be a force for good in the world, you know. And a lot of people will say that Jesus, that's mainly what he is. He's an example. He's a model for us. And when I would hear that, I would kind of recoil at that a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so much more than that. But as I watched Man of Steel this week, and I noticed that theme again of how Kal-El was the first natural birth on Krypton in like thousands of years, and so therefore was not locked into a pre-genetically determined purpose for his life. He is basically a model for what we can be if we have the ability to choose what we want to be. We can choose to be a force for good. We can choose to be something wonderful. Now, as believers, we know that we can try to choose all we want in this world, but we are in some significant ways broken, and we're needing to be healed and restored to the ideal that God has in mind for us, which Jesus wants to do for us. And so in that sense, Jesus is, especially in his resurrected body, a model of like what humanity is meant to be and can potentially become. But the road to get there is not merely one to just of us trying really hard. We need to be rescued first. And for all the talk in some of these movies and pushing of the theme that like Superman is an example in his behavior, what's also worth recognizing is Superman, first and foremost, saves people's butts from the fire. He gets them out of the horrible danger that they are in. And that is what Jesus has to do for us first, before we can ever eventually hope to become like him. And so we have that consistency, intended or not. We have that consistency, intended or not, in the parallel between Superman in these movies and Jesus, where he is a model for humans as Jesus is. He's an example that we should aspire to follow, but we also need him to rescue us first. And then we can look at him and move forward, looking at him as an example for a potential glorious future in which we become like him, which ultimately will happen when we are given a resurrected life in the way that he has as well. I think probably the more intended theme maybe would be working together. I mean, all these people coming from different backgrounds, and they have their issues that are haunting them, and they have to kind of work through those and find purpose in working together. But, you know, I like so many things, there's lots of little moments and phrases here and there throughout this movie, but not a strong, consistent theme that I noticed compared to, say, Man of Steel or even Batman vs. Superman. But then he puts on the black suit. Now, I have no aversion to just Superman wearing darker colors. And as a comics fan, I know that he has worn black specifically after his death in order to more quickly regenerate his solar-based abilities. And it wasn't just the fact that he's wearing black, and black kind of attracts heat, but there was an explanation in the comics that, no, this suit is also internally designed to draw more from the sun and, you know, kind of speed up his charging process. And we see him fly up out of the fortress, and then in space, he kind of opens up his arms, which in part, is another reference to Jesus, and into like, this is the culmination of his resurrection. You know, this is the full resurrection now, you know. Which reminds me, I think there's a parallel that I noticed, and I forgot to put in my notes here. Something about how it's only after... Oh, yeah. Batman, at some point in this last part, is talking about having faith that Superman will return. Having faith that Superman will return. And I thought, gosh, that can't be intentional. Because we as Christians believe that Christ was raised, and our hope is in both his resurrection and his return to save us and to usher us into this glorified existence. And I know that Snyder was raised actually in a home under Christian Science, which has some serious problems in its beliefs, despite having the name Christian as a part of it. It's got some major diversions from Orthodox Christianity. And but I can't help but wonder if maybe he's familiar enough, even though he was raised in this kind of like heavily distorted version of Christianity, even if you can even call it Christianity. I wonder if he would be aware enough of that concept. I don't know. But I took note of the fact that Batman was talking so much about having faith, and specifically it was around the time after, I almost said Jesus was resurrected, after Superman was resurrected, but before he returned. You know, there's this time in this story where he rises from the dead, he's seen by a few people, and then he's gone for a while. And it's only at the final moment when apocalypse is a great danger. Are you seeing this? When he returns to rescue and to lead us into a future where hopefully we can be like him. Thankfully, it's very soon after that we saw a real reason why we needed other people with different power sets, namely the Flash, because he was not able to get the energy surge to the mother box in time, and so Darkseid succeeded. There was unity. It was going to terraform the earth and all that kind of stuff. And then the music shifted, and we got this nice cascading, arpeggiating music that did ding, 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 ding. Just a different tone altogether. A tone in the music that said wonder. A tone that said that something otherworldly was about to happen, and in a good way. We were seeing an unveiling of something, and what we were seeing was I get shivers just saying that. My hair started standing up. We see an unveiling of the Flash's powers, and him realizing, I've got to do what I told myself I would never do. I've got to break my rule about going faster than the speed of light. I got to go way beyond the speed of light. I need to turn back time, And so in one sense, it was like almost a callback to the old Christopher Reeve spin around the earth, turn back time thing, but done so much better in a way that is more realistic, I guess, at least according to movie time travel rules. Because it's not the actual rotation of the earth that makes time pass. But anyway, that was so cool to see him break that rule, to have that moment where he's kind of, even though in hindsight, it's a little bit odd him talking aloud to his dad when his dad obviously can't hear him. But I think that, maybe we kind of mutter things. Some of us talk out loud to ourselves, and he's a super duper introvert. So I believe that he would talk out loud to himself pretty commonly, And so for him to just be quietly muttering these things out loud, thinking out loud to his dad, and just hoping that his dad will know that his son was one of the greats, because he's thinking that he might die doing this, It's not that it's causing him pain. That's what was so interesting. It's not that it was causing him pain. He seemed totally in his element, but he observed that it does weird things to time. He just didn't know what was going to happen, So, but he goes, not only builds up a charge again, he goes back in time just a few seconds to get back to that moment before it was the point of no return, and gives the mother box the charge that it needs. And that was very cool. I think that we're going to need in the future a reason why the Flash can't just do that whenever it's convenient. They'll have to be sure the next time, between now and the next time Flash is in a scenario where the audience would want him to turn back time, we need to establish cost and risk for that and make sure that this is understood to be a one-time thing. Otherwise, that's going to remove all tension. But doing it this time, such a gratifying moment. I almost got chills. I almost felt like tears welling up, to see this kind of moment I've had in my mind and my thoughts actualized, in a sense, in front of my eyes and become that much more real. I think that's one reason why some of these types of experiences can be emotional for us, because inside we want a better world, a greater world. We want to have a greater existence where we're more powerful, where things are set right. We want to see these things come about. And so when you see something actualized in live action, it brings it one step closer to almost it being real. And that can be a very moving, emotional experience, sometimes for reasons we don't understand. But I suspect that it has something to do with that internal longing that God has placed in us for eternity. So anyway, okay, I got to tuck my son in bed, and then I'll finish my thoughts here. So in this moment, coming back to Victor Stone, when he is rejecting this false representation of his family that's trying to coax him into just kind of giving up, essentially, he rejects it by saying, "I'm not broken," because something that was said by one of these fake versions of his dad or mom or something like that said something about, I can fix you, and he said, "I'm not broken," and that is a mantra, that is a motto, maybe is a better word, that has been floating around in different forms for a number of years now. In the same way that 10, 15, 20 years ago it was follow your heart, do what feels right, and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm seeing more and more of this idea, this rejection of the idea that we are broken. And specifically the word broken is used. Now, it may have ties, I'm not sure. I'd have to study it and the people who use this phrase in entertainment writing more closely to see if there is a link. I think it might be linked in some ways to those who are kind of affirming or promoting the LGBTQ movements. But I think in general, much like follow your heart, do what feels right, this is not something definitive that we should say about ourselves. If we're saying that we're not broken, I mean, that's another way of saying there's nothing wrong with us. Really, well, what I want to say in those moments is, what's your definition of fixed and not broken? What about compared to Jesus? Do you have no dysfunctions? Is there no part of you that's broken down and maybe needs some fixing compared to Jesus? And so I think it's, we're just lowering the bar. Instead of looking at ourselves and saying, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe there's something that needs fixing or healing or improving. We don't do that. We just say, no, I'm going to take the bar, the standard of virtue, and I'm just going to bring it down to where I'm already at conveniently and say, no, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I am not broken, And I think one of the reasons that seems to be done is because people are equating their status of being broken or unbroken as being equivalent to their value. That if someone is broken, then that must mean they are of less value. And that really strikes me as being born out of some kind of a utilitarian worldview where we're only as valuable as what we can provide in terms of usefulness. I don't know if there's any connection there or not, but what we as Christians ought to be affirming again and again is that being wrapped up in sin and brokenness has nothing to do with our value. That we are not at all less valuable because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So if being sinners reduced our value or made us of little to no value, then why in the world would Christ die for us? But the truth is that Christ died for us because he looked at us in our fallen, broken mess of a state and concluded they are of tremendous value. They are worth going through this, And so I think that a good thing for us to try to do as Christians in our conversations is to make, when we see a window of opportunity, to make differentiation between being broken and flawed and being of great value. That those two are not connected at all. And so there's no reason to say, I'm not broken. We can, in complete freedom and confidence, say, I am broken. I am a mess. I do need fixing. I am so glad that God loves me somehow in the midst of this brokenness that I cannot seem to shake, or that I'm not even strong enough to want to shake. All right, let's talk about the epilogue. We've got Victor's dad. He died, and he's got kind of a quote-unquote redemption arc. I use that as a shorthand. I really don't like redemption being, thrown around so much that way. But, we see that he did love his son, and he acknowledged that he made a bunch of mistakes and would change them and fix it all if he could. But here's something else that he said. He said, everything breaks, Victor. And so even though Victor, in that triumphant moment that we're supposed to feel with him, said, I'm not broken, we still have a character that at this point we are supposed to sympathize with. So he's a mouthpiece character at this moment whose words we are supposed to accept as true. And he says, everything breaks, Victor. So it's almost like the movie wants us to affirm that we are not broken, but then at the same time contradicts itself by saying everything breaks, and we should accept maybe that we are broken, And so I don't know what the intent was. That does seem to conflict a little bit, but I'm glad this line is in there. Just saying, listen, our brokenness is a reality, and we should face that and figure out how to move forward from that, instead of being in denial of it. There's a sense in which it's okay that you're broken. I wouldn't say okay in the sense that, yeah, just stay broken, it's okay. No. But it's not, being broken does not mean that you are defeated and without value,